tell me when you're ready. This is January the 10th, 1995, and we're in the Island Historical Museum with our friends, Dorothy Steven Hagen, Lorna Schiek, and her daughter, Dr. Judith Robinson. And we're going to start off with asking each one of them their first memories of the island. I guess first we'd like to know when you first arrived on the island. Who was the first one here? Was that you, Lorna?
Well, it was in 1934, I guess.
We arrived at the same time.
Oh, did you?
Oh, good. 1934. And how did you happen to come here?
Well, my mother, all three of us, my mother and the two children, and those Chicago winters were getting very difficult. We'd all have flu and bronchitis and so forth. So my father wanted to send us somewhere where it was warm, and one of his patients said, well, you should go to Anna Maria Island, send them there. And of course my father hadn't heard about it. So he wrote a letter to the Chamber of Commerce of the city of Anna Maria, because we had heard it was the city of Anna Maria, and the letter was given by the postmistress to Hartley Blackburn, and he responded to my father's letter and said, oh, this would be a wonderful place to come in. So then my father wrote back and said, well, we need to rent a house. So then he handed that to the postmistress, J.D. Whitehead, and they happened to have a house they could rent. So they wrote and corresponded with my father, and for 6 months the rent was $150. And so we came on the train, and we arrived here. We arrived in Braden on my mother's birthday, December 16th. We didn't know anybody. We got off the train, and there was a taxi there. It was a lady taxi driver. Her name turned out to be Annie Silver.
Oh, yeah.
So she said she would take us out to the island. Well, all the way out to the island, and we were talking about, we're looking forward to being in the city of Anna Maria, and we were quite excited. And I was saying, gee, I hope they have a good movie theater there. I'd love to go to the movies. And she said, oh no, they don't have that. It's everything we would mention. They didn't have anything. She said, actually, there's nothing out there. She said, I don't know why, you don't just stay in Bradenton. Well, as it turned out, she was pushing to get people for the Dixie Grand Hotel, and they would give her a commission if she found someone who would stay there. So we arrived and rented the house on Spring, the Whitehead house. And we just felt desolate because we knew nobody, and it was not a city, there was nothing. There was a post office and a store, of course, and a lot of beach, we knew that. But there was nothing else. And about 2 days after we were here, somebody came to the door and invited us to a Christmas party at what's called then the community hall. It is now the theater. And then the lady asked the ages of my mother's children, and my mother told her, not knowing why. So when we went to the party, they had a tree on the stage, and they had a present for every child on the island, including us.
Mm.
And so that opened up our window.
About how many children were there at that time?
Probably 20 or 30. There were very few. Were you there for that Christmas?
No, I don't remember that Christmas.
But that was so delightful. And from then on, in the summer, the winter didn't seem to last long enough for us. Of course, I was going to school. My brother, he would go down to the pier and fish. At the age of 3, he became a champion fisherman.
Oh.
What was that man's name that taught him how to fish? Captain Jake, wasn't it? Captain Jake.
And Rudy was the name of the man out
Yeah,
there.
Frank. And Frank used to make sandwiches for my brother every day.
So, Dorothy, you arrived about that same time?
Yes, my grandmother was in real estate, and she owned the Roser Cottage. That was her summer place on the island. And when we came down to be with her, that's where we lived for 2 years, 34 and 35. And of course, we experienced the 35 hurricane in that little cottage, and it's still there.
Oh, well, tell us about that hurricane of 35.
Well, it was pretty bad. We were afraid of the big surge from the bay, which never came, of course. But the rain and the wind, I can remember as a child. I still don't like the sound of wind today because of that wind. It just never stopped. I mean, that
Was that in what
Don't
time?
you remember
Wasn't that that was during the winter
35.
season? Yeah.
35. I don't remember what month it was.
Well, did you have a lot of flooding? The water came up around
No, just flooding from
from the
the
sky?
rain. The
I
rain was
remember
so
all that
bad.
wind because I went out in the yard to get something that was blowing, and it blew me right up against a tree.
Right. It was very, very strong wind.
Were there any houses blown away or anything like that that you don't know?
Well, some houses went in, I think at Bradenton Beach along there, but there was a big yacht anchored out off the pier, and the native men tried to tell him that he better move that, that, it's a nice 60-foot yacht, nothing can happen to it. He thought he was safe. And it went down, of course.
Mm.
We saw those beautiful satin spreads and pillows and things floating on the water. It made you feel terrible. It was a bad experience. But that was how we got to Florida. And of course, my mother was a northerner, and after my grandmother died in 1934, well, then she kept wanting to go back up north. But for us children who lived here, it was just paradise, of course, and I think that's the reason that I'm back here today, because I knew exactly where I was coming when I retired.
We used to have picnics on the beach. We'd go down what we used to call Lena's Lake. Lena
That's
Phelps.
where I learned to swim.
Yeah.
Where was that?
Betty Blackburn, down at the,
Well, Lena's Lake would be down on the Gulf side. That little lake that came right in.
At the point?
yeah, the
Oh,
point.
not quite the point.
Oh.
No, not
Isn't
that
this
far.
Wasn't that it?
You mean where Talbot Brewer's house is?
Yeah, right in
Like
that
that?
area. Right.
Oh,
Mhm.
there is a
And-
lake there.
And it wasn't, well, it's
I
not as
wouldn't
big
want
as it
to
was
swim
then
it.
because they filled it
Yeah,
in.
the
and-
storm took it out.
Yes.
Remember, we went down to check it out after
Yeah.
the storm, and our lake was gone.
Because the sand, it came right in, and then it gradually filled up again in later years, because we used to go there for picnics.
Of course, I didn't know because we were gone.
Yeah. So now what about Lena's Lake?
Well, that's where the kids, our age, would go down, we'd get food together, and we'd go down and have picnics there, and they'd swim in that lake, and
Mhm.
those who could swim, I always had to hang onto a board because I couldn't swim.
That was Aunt Lena, right?
Yeah, and
Lena
Lena Phelps.
Yeah.
Right.
And Betty Blackburn was the one that taught us to swim, those of us who.
Well, nobody could teach me how to swim.
Well,
I've had lessons from the best of them.
but I can remember Lorna, just keeping us in stitches all the time. We were very funny.
I'm sorry.
Oh, we weren't.
That's a good characteristic.
Oh, she had a funny story to tell about the pageant that Marion Coleman, remember, she had the Christmas pageant.
Oh, yes.
And Lorna was one of the angels, and she
What? Her
Well,
wings slipped?
My mother decided I needed my hair cut because it was getting a little untrammeled, from being in the water and just being out and about. So we didn't have a car that year. And the Whiteheads were going into town, and they said they knew this wonderful barber who could cut my hair. So I rode with them in their old Essex down Cortez Road, which is the only way to town. And they stopped it right at the edge of Cortez at this bar. And I thought they were just going to go in and deliver a message, but they were delivering me to the barber, it turned out,
Oh,
who
no.
was the bartender as well as the barber. And so they left me there and they went to town. So he told me to get up on the bar stool, but there was no mirror in sight. And I sat at the bar stool, and he'd come over to clip a little bit, and then he'd go fill somebody a beer, and then he'd come back, clip a little bit more. And I never knew what I looked like. I didn't know what was happening. I just waited for them to come.
Dad, how old were you at this time?
She was probably about 14, 13.
Well, no, I think I was 12, yeah.
12.
12. And so they finally came, and they came in to get me, and I said, how does it look? And they just sort of stood there, and I thought, well, it's either one way or the other. So when I got in the car, Jack turned the mirror up so I couldn't see myself in the mirror.
Oh, did you cry?
Well, I still didn't know what I looked like, so they dropped me off at the house, which was over here on Spring. And my mother and my brother came to the door, and I could tell by the look on her face that there was something wrong. And I went in and looked at the mirror, then I cried. He had cut it about this short all over my head, because apparently he'd clip this and that would be too, then he'd have to even it up.
Matching it.
So it was
Oh,
sort of
no.
like a long butch, I guess you'd say.
But today it would probably be right in my
Right.
style.
But I was supposed to be an angel in this pageant, and Miss Marion had made this little halo out of Christmas tinsel or whatever this silver stuff is. And they put it on my head. Well, it watered me down, so my hair would lie down, except this part would dry out and that thing would tip up. It never stayed straight on my head.
Her head lobe was moving.
Undulating all over.
It reminds me of the time George went down Bay Boulevard and he heard there was a barber there. It was soon after we arrived. And he got the worst haircut and he found out that the barber was blind.
Oh.
Isn't that right, George?
I don't remember that. To tell you the truth.
The barber on Bay Boulevard.
All I know is he was pulling the scissors out before he finished cutting, you know, and he kept pulling and pulling and pulling.
Oh, I know
Yeah,
what
I
you
heard
mean.
that he was
hurts.
partially blind.
His name was Blair, Mr. Blair. I don't know, he could have been.
Stop it just a minute, please. All right. I'd like to hear something about school days when you were youngsters. Where did you go to school?
Manatee High School.
It was,
We were bused
it was
back in 1934,
7 through
35.
12 at that time.
Was it 7 or 8?
No, it was 7 through 12. Because the island school was just through the 6th grade.
That must have been why my sister went with us. I couldn't figure out why she didn't stay here on the island, and that was because it was 7 and 12. She was in
And
7th grade.
Bill Davis drove the school bus. And at the time, I wasn't aware of why he was doing it, but when we would approach the bridge, coming or going, he always opened the door. You know how they push that
Yeah.
thing? That was so if the bridge collapsed, we'd all get out the door.
Of course, you
I
went
didn't
over
realize that either.
the wooden rickety bridge.
Right, that was it, right?
Yeah. And I imagine when the school bus went over, there couldn't be another car on the
Oh, no.
other.
How did we do that? We just one way.
Yeah, the
They had to
cars would wait
until we
one
got
into the
across.
other. Uh-huh.
I don't remember too distinctly about
But you
that.
weren't
We had fun.
you weren't young enough to go to school on the island.
No,
I mean, you
was
were a high
Yeah,
school
we were
age.
past that.
Yeah. So
And then in a couple of years, my brother went to school on the island. He was in that maintenance school.
Oh, yes, it was.
And as I said, he was quite a fisherman. Just a little, this Captain Jake taught him how to fish because my mother didn't know how to do anything. And he said, if you want your son to fish, and I know he wants to fish, he said, let me teach him because you're not teaching him anything. So one day, Bruce said, you know, Mother, he said, the mackerel are running today. He'd heard it from the men down at the pier. And he said, but I not go to school so I can go down and see if I can catch some of the mackerel. No, you have to go to school. Well, of course, he didn't go to school. He went to the pier, and Frank stopped by the house on his way to town to get some supplies. And he said, I hate to tell you this, but I know that you should know that your son, you know, that he did not go to school today. He went down the mackerel run, whatever the mackerel run is. And so when Bruce came home, she didn't say anything to him, but he was dirty because he'd been in swimming, and afterward they went swimming. So he was taking his bath, and she was saying, you know, you're such a nice boy. Your father and I are so proud of you, and it's just so wonderful that we have such a happy family. And she was just bragging about him, and then he just started to cry. He said that he wasn't that good, that he'd skip school to go catch mackerel.
Oh, bless his heart.
well, it was a temptation living out here on the beach.
Oh, yes, that was very, very strong.
So what other memories do you have in that age when you were early teenage?
Well, I remember all the slot machines in Mrs. Wardy's grocery store, which is the location of the present post office.
Oh.
And then it became, they had slot machines, some slot machines, and then you could go down and buy a loaf of bread and play the slot machine. And it wasn't, the kids would do it, any of us would do it, you know.
I don't remember that.
You probably didn't
But
have to go shopping.
I just spent, maybe I didn't, but I spent a lot of time on the beach
Yeah.
with Dorothy Raymond. Do you remember Dorothy Raymond Whitaker?
And Lorraine Sham.
And Lorraine.
I don't know what her last name is now, but anyway. But you remember Pete and Marguerite Venue's Pavilion, which is where the sandbar is now. And that was sort of a family gathering place. We would all walk down in the evening, and you could play ping pong, or you could dance, or they played cards, and it was just the one place on the island. And of course, it burned later. It was in a fire.
And wasn't there a pier that went out into the Gulf there?
That time there was. And there was a diving platform out.
Yeah, because those poles stayed
Yeah,
for
they
quite a
stayed
few
for
years.
years,
They were
didn't
there
they?
when we
Uh-huh.
came.
But that was such a nice place to gather. It was the only, you know, the main place where people could gather, and then he would make sandwiches, and they had soft drinks.
Well, I don't remember that. I can't bring that into focus.
Did the excursion boats still come from Tampa and St. Pete then?
I don't think they
That was
did.
earlier.
Yeah,
I think that was earlier.
And then you used to have bonfires where everybody would lay out wood for the whole week.
Yeah, we had bonfires.
On the beach?
Yeah, you'd have bonfire, you could do what you wanted on the beach then. Because, you know,
Well,
dogs
there
were,
weren't that many people.
Yeah.
Well, the whole population, what, was 500 or something
oh,
like that?
yeah, nothing
I
like
mean, the
that.
whole,
And the dogs had to run on the beach. Our dog would spend hours every day digging up ghost crabs.
Mhm. Yeah. Those were the days, huh?
And I know we have a video. My father used to take, he had a movie camera, and he was not a good photographer. I hope that you're doing fine. And he took movies, and so my brother in later years put them together on a video for us. And there's one where the boat came in at the pier, and it was just loaded with fish. And nowadays, you know, if you've seen
Oh, yeah.
2 fish or 10 fish,
Yeah,
but
right.
this had just, I don't know how many fish were in there, but it was sort of interesting to remember at that time.
That's the way they used to get the fish.
How easy it
Well,
was.
even all the fish they would catch on the pier, you know, every
Yeah.
time you'd put your
Right.
line in, you'd bring a
Yeah,
fish
pull out
in.
something.
Yeah.
And I remembered something yesterday afternoon, there was, you know, there's where our post office is now, and then down the street, there was several old houses on that side of the street going to the Gulf. And then, of course, at the end on the right side was the pavilion. And there was a lady that lived in one of those houses, I don't remember her name, but she was elderly, and she stayed in the house most of the time. The house was kind of musty and closed up. But occasionally, the kids would come in and just visit with her for a few minutes, and she was always sitting in a rocking chair. And one day, a friend of hers came by to visit, and the lady was rocking. And all of a sudden, her friend said, "Just keep rocking, dearie." She said, "There's a rattlesnake wrapped around the rungs of your chair, but just keep rocking." Because she was afraid if she stopped rocking, that this was kind of hypnotizing the snake. And if she stopped, so the other lady ran across to the pavilion and got some men to come over, and boy, they beat the devil out of that snake. And then the lady fainted.
Well, isn't that funny? I have a rattlesnake story to tell too, because on Pine Avenue, you know, this rather, you know, country. There weren't any.
As my mother said yesterday, all the roads were just white
Crushed shell.
Uh-huh.
But anyway, there was a vacant house a couple doors up from where we lived. And we had a milkman, didn't we? Didn't we have a milkman?
We had a bread man and a milkman and a laundry man.
Well, I think it was the milkman that came by. And I guess there was a big rattlesnake sunning itself on the steps of his empty house. He was, you know, just lying there in the sun. But we kids were around. I don't know, but we kids, maybe it was just me by myself. And, but anyway, he beat he killed the rattlesnake. But I was fascinated by that snake. And nobody, I don't know why I was home, where my sister was, and my father, of course, was working. He was working in town. But I said to that man, I said, could I take that, you know, drag that snake home, you know, just down the street? And he done something around it so that I could drag it home. And I curled it up on the, you know, our garage was in the back, so when Dad got out of the garage, I curled it up on our back step. And as if it were, you know, alive. And to surprise them, did you know there was a musk or something coming off that snake that my mother got ill from it? I mean, it didn't last very long, but we figured that's what it was. But anyway, I can remember dragging that rattlesnake home.
Well, there were probably more rattlesnakes than people on the island today.
I'm sure there were.
Because I went out to the garbage pit one day to dump the garbage, and that was before garbage man.
Yes.
So they would dig a big pit, and I saw this snake curled up right at the edge, and I called the man one of the whitehead boys, I don't know which one, might have been John or Johnny or Jack probably, and to come, I said, "Oh, there's a snake here," and boy, he had me move out of there in a hurry because it was a coral snake, and I had never seen one before. And they're not just very big.
So, Lorna, did you get married then on the island, or were?
No, I got married in Long Island during the war.
Oh, so you left the island for?
Well, then, you know, my senior year in high school, we didn't come down because my parents thought I should stay and finish 1 year in one place, although my brother and I certainly wanted to come back. And then I went off to college, and that's where I met Sam. And then he went into the Navy when Pearl Harbor got the message, and so then we were married later in Long Island.
Awesome. Now, when did you move back?
Well, we came back in '54. Yeah, we were coming down to have some job interviews in Florida. And Sam said, "Well, I want to see the island because you're always talking about the island." So we came out here, and then my parents had said, "Well, go by and visit Hartley and Betty Blackburn while you're here." So we just stopped by and visited because they had all been good friends. And Hartley said, "Well, what do you?" And we said we were going to be going to education, and he said we'd had an interview in various places in Florida. And he said, "Well, what are your fields?" And so I said I was a librarian, and Sam was at that time a special ed teacher. And he said, "Well," he said, "we have a couple of positions open right here in Manatee County." So he sent us that day to be, to see the schools. And so we sort of decided we'd stay here.
Oh. And did you move into the house where you are now?
No. My parents had a house on Beach. They had a house on Beach, so we stayed there. But every day we would go in and look for a house in town because we thought, well, we're going to work in town, we should live in town. And after about 2 weeks of that, in the July heat, Sam and I looked at each other and we said, "Why are we going into town? We could hardly wait to come back to the island. Why don't we look for a place on the island?" So we did. And the first place, we rented that one right across from the post office. At that time, the man who built it called it Sunbeam, but the people call it now the Hurricane House.
That is the most popular house. I've heard more stories about that house. That's where I lived when I first came.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
And it was painted yellow back then.
Yeah. Right.
Well, then you have some.
Well, when
nice
did
pictures
Judith come
together.
along?
Yeah. So when did Judith come into the picture?
1954.
1950.
We all came together, didn't we?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so now, what are your earliest recollections?
Not too many. I remember the trip to Florida, but I remember Sunbeam Cottage and having swimming lessons in the Gulf. About 4 or 5 of us took swimming lessons, and vacation Bible school at Rosa Church. And the Barton family had about.
I remember that,
Yeah.
yeah.
And you went to the island school, you were lucky enough to go, and then you had.
In October, they'd have the pageant where everybody had to wear long dresses for Halloween. It was for Halloween, but
Oh.
you got dressed up like it was a cotillion.
Oh.
And the 6th grade class would be, the boys and girls would be paired up, and they'd have some kind of a promenade, and then they'd pick a queen.
And then Mrs. Coombs would take care of you, because Sam and I were both working. Well, first of all, we all went to Palmetto, and you were in school there, and Sam was there, and I was there at Palmetto, which was then K through 9, that particular school. And we'd all come home, and then Judith, the next year, our next door neighbor, Mrs. Coombs, who was such a dear lady, and Judith wanted to go to the
I
island
remember
school.
her. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. Right next to the
What was her first name?
house there.
Sunbeam.
Mhm.
Elizabeth.
Yeah, Elizabeth Coombs.
Uh-huh.
And Judith wanted to go to the island school, and we wanted her to go, but we didn't know when she would come home in the afternoon, we wouldn't be there. But Mrs. Coombs said, well, she could come to my house and tell me about
Who
it.
was principal at that time?
That was Mrs. Phillips.
Mrs. Phelps.
She was an early latchkey kid, huh?
Yeah.
So, anything else different at the school then that they?
We used to do our homework down by the bay. We had Mrs. Lark for 5th grade and 6th grade.
Helen
We were
Lark,
working on
yeah.
projects. She let us go down and sit in the sand and do our homework and work on our little projects. And the trees, we were climbing the trees back then. They're probably real big now. But we'd spend our recesses climbing those trees.
You'll have to go down and see now. They have it all undercover.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that whole playground is undercover. Yeah, but the large climbing frames are still there. Yeah.
And we have a little bitty library just in one of the rooms. Just some books on shelves, and you could go in for half an hour, pick out a book.
Yeah, you've got to go down there because they've got a huge library.
And didn't you and Chris used to ride your bike out to what is now Key Royale?
Chris Torgerson Shaw and I we went out to Key Royale when it was just a wild island. We both brought home our mother some our mother's wild orchids.
Oh.
And there was an artesian well there that just kept spilling water. I don't know who had built that. But it was a
Was there a
wonderful
bridge
place.
there then?
We went over on a little boat.
Uh-huh.
That was
That's
before
right.
there was a bridge.
Yeah.
And then you had station. It was exciting.
Oh, at School Key.
Is that called?
That was School
Was
Key.
it School Key?
Yeah. Because
Lots
we
of
used to
snakes.
ski in it.
Lots of snakes.
But we used to have water moccasins in our backyard. When I would get home, I'd have to make sure I could tell what was hosed and what was water moccasins. Because they'd all be lying in the yard, you know, you had to be real
It's
careful.
amazing that no one was hurt. with all
Well,
this.
Yeah, it is
So
amazing.
do you remember when you had to stay home sick one time and we had the plumber to come?
You know, there was a snake in the house, and so I asked the plumber if he would kill it, so he killed it with a pipe.
Oh,
Yeah.
I forget what kind of
almost-
snake it was.
It was a, what they call a little brown rattler, he turned out.
Oh.
And he almost broke the terrazzo floor. Judith said he was beating with his big pipe in the living room, just beating this snake as hard as he could. I think he was more afraid of the snake than she was.
And supposedly we used to have one of the panthers in the woods across from our house.
Yeah, I still have that article under that glass. Did you notice that the other day?
Florida panther.
Yeah.
Right down at the end where Hammock Lane is, all in there.
Mhm.
And so Sam said he saw it. Was that it? He saw it. But the way they reported it in the paper, they quoted him like he was talking like an old Florida cracker.
Yeah, he's a school principal, very well educated, and the paper said, there's something out there in them woods killing them birds.
This was quoting Sam.
Yeah.
Wonder who the reporter was.
I don't know, but I still have that little article. I just noticed it the other day in the living room.
We need to make a print of it.
Yeah.
Need to
A
what?
copy of
Make a
that
copy,
article.
yeah.
Made a copy for the
Yeah.
museum.
And then those big old wood spiders, those golden spiders that would be in the woods, so you couldn't really walk through without
yes.
walking into this
Right.
massive web and huge spider, orange spiders.
Oh, yes.
How about the big housekeepers in the house?
Yeah.
Oh, you mean they were
The household pets that,
right.
The
They,
first
Well,
time-
you had to have a housekeeper. One time I was down at the beach and one of the Snyder girls said, do you have a housekeeper? I said, my goodness, no, we don't. You know, we're poor. And she says, no, I'm in the spider. She said, you have to have a housekeeper in your house because it brings you good luck and it kills the roaches. So if we ever had a housekeeper, I always left it alone and let it go around.
that's what we call household
They
pets.
were enormous,
Right.
weren't they?
I can
Household
remember,
pet.
they were in town too, because I can remember Mother, how upset she was when Grandmother, you know, saw the spider and she was about to kill it. Grandmother said, no, don't, you're not supposed to. I never heard it called a housekeeper, but that's a good name.
Well, they told us they were household pets, and,
Oh.
Judith and I had a horror of them, remember?
Oh, yeah.
And Sam would say, no, don't kill them. And one time, I remember in the hall, there was one up on the ceiling, and he said, oh, don't worry, he's not bad. And he dropped, right then he dropped right
Oh,
there.
no. That was my horror, that you'd be lying in bed and
Oh, you never knew where they were going to be.
and it isn't roaches, it's palmetto bugs.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. And we go down to the city pier at night when we lived in Sunbeam. We just take that little walk to the pier after dinner. And one night they brought in a huge shark. Everybody was in a big uproar, remember? And
Yeah.
they thought it was dead, and one guy kicked it to show how manly he was, and the shark's jaws went like that
Oh,
and
no.
scared him to death.
Well, I remember they used to bring sharks in our city pier. And
Oh,
Rudy,
that's what she was talking
is that the
about.
city pier?
Mhm.
Oh, yeah, because Rudy used to always have shark set up and it would rattle it when, you know, when a shark would hit, we could all tell.
A chain,
you know,
yeah,
it's a little
a
chain,
chain.
and we'd run out there.
How about the
We used to get some big
raccoons?
Raccoons.
Lots of raccoons.
Oh, all over the place. And you weren't so afraid of them then. You could hand them their bread, and they'd take their little
They were like
monkey-like
little pets.
hands. And they'd come every night. And the night blooming cactus, the night blooming cirrus would be
Yeah,
all
not
up
so
and down
much
the
of
road.
that
It smells so good.
No.
There is some around, I know, but
Mhm.
not, it was everywhere. That was really nice.
And there were 3 or 4 mosquitoes back then. too.
Yeah.
Yes.
They had
There were.
fog machines.
You're right.
The
They
fog,
didn't
the
have-
fog.
They didn't start out with a fog machine, that was before they had the fog machine. Oh, they were bad.
We would run out and put our clothes on the line, and then we would run back in, and then when we had to pick it up, we would run
Run
out.
out.
We were in absolute panic, because
Yeah.
the mosquitoes are just
I
driving
remember
crazy.
If you do, you just.
They'd cover you.
I don't think they had foggers in 34 and
No, no, they
35. I
didn't.
think it was, we came down on vacation one time, and we came out to the island, and all of a sudden, we were driving along, and we were just enveloped in this great cloud, and I was scared to death. I wasn't driving, Ted was. And then we found out that's what it was.
Well,
Right.
what did they do about them? See this swisher over here on the wall,
Oh,
Elizabeth
that-
Moss made. She said that's what they would keep by the front door. Now, when you open the door,
Yeah, you had
you'd
to
swish them
them
out
right.
to get in. But I wonder if there's any other thing done about mosquitoes. I guess would be
In school, they
surprised.
used to show us movies about how the kids should go in the woods and find old barrels and turn them
Water.
over and
Mhm.
make sure there was no standing water. So we'd all go on patrol, standing water, so we could capture mosquitoes.
And how about Mrs. Phelps and her bird walks and her bird books? And
Yeah.
The bird book.
that was a tradition for years and years that they made the bird books.
Yeah, she loved her birds. And then there were lots of fiddler crabs. Lots and lots and lots of birds.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
You
Fiddler's
don't see
Flats.
too many
It was at the end of
Fiddler's
Spring
Flats.
Street, there was all that one whole area there,
Oh,
and it was
I
just,
love that.
you could hear them as you walked down that street.
My grandmother said they used to just go down the street in mass and
Right.
they'd be
I
purring.
remember that.
Hmm.
I used to love them. But you
What
never
kind
got
of
your
wildlife was it?
Fiddler Flats, they call them.
Yeah.
Fiddler Flats?
Yeah.
That was, wasn't that at the end of spring,
Uh-huh.
Fiddler Flats?
It was just all
Well, what
flat.
amazes me is that I found my friend Lorna after 60 years. I mean, that to me
I wasn't
is just...
even lost.
We were separated.
But Dorothy, when did you come back then, after you
Well, to
retired?
live, I didn't come back until 1980, but we had been coming down on vacations, you know, because my husband fell in love with the island too, and that's where we were going to retire. We thought we had a sailboat on Lake Erie, and we were going to sail down there coastal, but
Oh,
he died in 1973. So, but I got to thinking I mean, as much as we hated as children to leave the island, it was a good thing we did because I wouldn't have Ted if we hadn't have gone north.
yeah.
But then the fact that, you know, I didn't know too many Lornas in my lifetime, and it was through a mutual friend here on the island.
Yeah, that's
that
an
we
unusual
went
name.
out for lunch and in a movie. And Clara introduced me to Lorna, and I was sitting in the back seat, and I was looking at the back of her head. And I thought, Lorna. And then I asked her, I said, did you happen to live here in 1934 and 35? And she said, yes.
Oh.
And then we realized that that's who we were. We
It was a
childhood
wonderful reunion,
Yeah, it
wasn't
was.
it?
And the fact that this is another amazing thing, the fact that we turned out to be the same profession, librarians.
Oh.
I mean, there was no inkling in our early life that we would turn out to be librarians.
Well, I'm sure we were both readers, but
Yes,
but
but I
I'm the
don't
only.
think, but when I worked in the library, boy, we never had any time to read. But except, of course, at home. But I thought that was rather coincidental.
And Judith, you're a,
She's
what are you now in
I teach library science in the university.
library science teacher?
It made me think of all the winter kids who used to come down. Sometimes we'd know somebody for 3 or 4 months. Dick Lowe was one I remember. And I always remember what happened to them. They'd come down from Michigan or Ohio with their parents, and then you might never see them again.
Mhm.
But they'd come into school for a while and then disappear. Then we had the baseball kids, the baseball players who would come down and winter here, then they go away.
Mhm.
So there was always an influx of people that you never really saw again.
Yeah, because of course during the season, I guess the school population almost doubles.
Oh, yes.
So many more come down. So we talked about storms. Was there anything else that you recall that was sort of a catastrophe or anything that really outstanding that?
That was the biggest thing in my lifetime, which was almost 2 years is the only time that I lived here. And that 35 storm was the biggest thing I can remember.
Were you here when they were filming on an island with you, with Esther Williams?
That was, I think that was just before we returned,
Oh,
because that was in the early 50s, I think.
because then they put the airport down in Holmes Beach.
Yeah, up there at the airport.
And,
I remember hearing them talk about it, that
Yeah.
it had been
It
filmed
was
when we
gone.
came.
But then the small planes used to come in at that.
Yeah, they were always coming in
Yeah.
there.
Well, anyway, you've seen a lot of changes, haven't you?
Mm-hmm. I should say so.
My mother was saying that when we be at home in Evanston, and every once in a while Bruce would say, "When are we going home?"
Oh,
This
he
was
meant-
home. Yeah, this was home. Up there was not home.
Well, I felt my life just came full circle because my grandmother's buried in the old Trophyville Cemetery in
Oh,
Bradenton.
my goodness.
And so it was just a natural thing when it came time for me to retire. I knew exactly where I was going.
Now, Dorothy, when you say you lived here on the island, you were in John Roser's cottage right across
That was
from
my
Roser
grandmother's
Church
cottage down.
on Pine Avenue. So that's one of our most historical
That's right.
houses on the island. That was a wonderful place to start, wasn't it?
It certainly was. Yeah, mother and daddy and my sister and I and Lena and Minnie. We had a beautiful orange cat, and Lena was our little, she was part Spitz. But then when we moved up to Nashville, when we left here, and we got a dog and cat with us on the trip up, driving. And we found out after we lived in Nashville that Minnie was really Mickey.
Oh.
Correctly named.
Well, Lorna, you have a lot of cats, don't you? How many cats do you
Well,
have?
I don't have as many as we have, as we did have. We were talking about Miss Marion, and her house was just,
Mary
she lived with her
Coleman.
parents, right across from the original island school. And at one time, we estimated she had about 50 cats in and out and around, about, a lot of cats. She was really,
I lived beside them for a few years.
and she had cats.
Yeah.
I mean, they still had cats.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we used to laugh, you know, there was just the one road Gulf Drive, the length of the island. And Miss Marion had a car that she would drive, I'm sure you can probably remember. And there would be signs, you know, when you get to the school, and it would say, school's over 15 miles an hour, and we used to always laugh because you could tell them that you could see Miss Marion, you could tell the car because she really was concentrated on her driving. And of course, when she got to the school zone that said 50 miles an hour, she had to speed up because she wasn't going.
I remember that.
Well, I remember, of course, her church, you know, Roser was her church, naturally, and she used to get, well, there wasn't any regular minister, but she used to get the visiting ministers, you know, come to fill in the pulpit. But when she learned that my father was the son of a minister, well, she used to get him, but she didn't have a minister. She used to get him to fill in for the worship service. You know,
And there was one man who would come down in the winter with his wife. He was a professor at the University of Chicago, and he would be the minister while he was here. And she played the organ, which was a pump organ, and she always wore a hat with a little sort of flower in it, and she was playing away in the organ. And then she would peep up like this every so often to see if, like, if there were 10 people, she wanted to see if another person might have come into the church. And they're trying to get a children's choir, a youth choir.
Oh.
And of course I thought, well, boy, that would be great. I want to be in the choir. Of course, my voice was terrible. And they didn't know what to do with me because I had volunteered. So she asked me if I would please pump the organ for her. So I was the pump the organ every this thing while she played and peeped.
Was that by hand? You
Yeah,
pumped
sure,
it
by hand, yeah.
Isn't she the one who invented that song?
No, that was Fanny Wingate Heron.
Yeah, that's our theme song, the historical theme song. There's a church on the island.
Oh,
Yeah.
the church.
That's
on the island.
Mrs. Warding's mother,
Oh,
Yeah.
Fanny Wingate Heron. That is her name, isn't it?
Anyway, right. Yeah.
Like come to the church in the Wildwood, it's come to the church.
That,
in
it's the tune to
Yeah.
Church in Wildwood.
So it wasn't completely original.
It was
Those
very
are,
fitting, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I always liked that song. It was a nice song.
well, let's see, any other things you can think of?
Lorna probably has lots more than I have, but as I said, it made quite an impression on me living here.
Then Sam became principal of the island school.
Well, first he was principal at Happiness House, and then the Island School.
How many years was he at the island school?
Well, he must have been there about 12 years, I guess, and then he went to Aunt Jessie P. Miller and was there until he retired. And I never left Palmetto. I made that trip every day for 30 years.
That's quite a ways to go.
Like our Cliff going back and forth
Mhm.
from Ellington out here, you know, our choir director now, and Burns.
Yeah. Well, the trip in, of course, that's harried always driving in, but coming back was so nice because then you could see the Gulf. You know,
Yeah. Coming home.
It was worth it.
When you were at the island school, were there any other extra things that we've talked about the bird book and the swimming lessons, and were there any other things that the school offered, or was the community center starting then?
The community center started about the time I was in the 6th grade, I guess, and we used to go over there and play softball sometimes.
Did you
just
take
as a
dancing
field.
lessons over the community center?
Well, somewhere we had dancing lessons, and there were quotidians in town.
There was always a problem, wasn't it, when you had things in town?
Yeah, and then when you started taking the bus in town, you had friends in town, and they wanted you to do things, and they stuck at you.
Well, I don't know, it seemed like I transported a lot of people back and forth from town to the island.
I know my children always said, why can't we live in town? There's nothing to do out here. Now they think it's pretty nice out here.
That's right.
Yeah.
They used to have the 12 o'clock whistle. I guess they don't do that anymore, do they?
At the firehouse,
Yeah,
I remember that.
that was nice,
I wish
wasn't
they
it?
still did that.
There are a lot of changes, a lot more people, a lot of houses, but no mosquitoes.
No mosquitoes, that's right.
Well, I thank you all very much I think it's been a
It was
lot
our
of fun
pleasure.
talking about
I
the
certainly
early
enjoyed
days.
it. Getting to meet Judy.
Yeah.